Hi Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Very happy to be here in Amsterdam.
Money 2020, Europe, arguably one of the biggest, most important events in the fintech industry, at least in Europe, for
Sure,
that one.
of course.
So happy to spend some time with you. If we had more time, I'd love to talk about your volunteering work. I love doggies, for instance, and of course people, so that'd be amazing. But if we step back a bit, for people who are not familiar with Jumio, it's probably very few people only, but could you please give us a helicopter view of your organization?
Sure, absolutely. So Jumio is the world's largest AI-powered trusted identity as a service. What that means is we're how companies establish trust remotely. So if you've ever used a shared economy or opened up a bank account or rented a car or something and taken a picture of your ID and taken a selfie, that's usually us. And so what's really important is most players in the industry are checking out who you say you are, and we're one of the only companies that verifies who you really are. And that's done by looking at your ID and then taking your selfie to make sure there's no identity theft, account takeover, et cetera. So we're the one that powers that, and I guarantee we're on your phone already.
You are.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we're talking about solving solutions or problems and providing solutions. So which kind of, again, problems are you solving with your technology, the broader scope?
Sure. So since we're here at Money 2020, we'll confine it to FSI and financial services, but in general, we're used as part of the onboarding or the KYC process for companies to know who they're dealing with. And like I said, as part of that onboarding, when you sign up, they want to be getting your ID, getting your selfie, maybe even registering your biometrics. And they do that so not only do they know it's really you when you're signing up, but then later, 6 months, 12 months later, when you want to have a security challenge or add someone to your account or you forget your password, all you need to do is take a 3D selfie, and we're able to match that to what was taken at the onboarding process. And we're able to have it be a super smooth, simple process for the customer.
So we're talking about frictionless, again, the most simple, easiest process and experience possible for the customer.
Exactly. I mean, in FSI, we're always worried about fraud and money laundering and things like that, but ultimately it's all about the 99% of the good customers that just want to work with you. And it might be at 1 o'clock in the morning on their webcam, it might be when they're standing in line at Starbucks. We work with Monzo, who famously talks about you should be able to start your queue at the coffee shop, and by the time you get to the front counter to order coffee, you should be able to be done signing up for your account. And we help power that, because ultimately a lot of this isn't just about catching the fraudsters, it's about converting the good customers.
I like that, converting and focusing on the good customer as well. The RegTech industry is pretty packed. I mean, there's a lot of various players there. Could you please tell us more about the differentiator of your technology, especially in the authentication space?
Sure. So there's two different pieces, and lately Gartner talks about this. They call it identity corroboration. And what it means is when you're signing up for a service that's called enrollment, where you're typing in your name and your address and that sort of thing. And that's where you're providing your ID and taking your selfie. But in the past, what would happen is you'd sign up, and then 6 or 12 months later, someone would take over your account and then record their voice or their fingerprint or their face or whatever. And so what's really unique about our offering, we're the first that provides an end-to-end solution that takes you from the onboarding process where you know exactly who you're dealing with in real time. And then we're also recording their biometrics like a 3D face print, so that 6 or 12 months later when you try to do something, all you need to do is take another 3D selfie and you can match it. And what that means is, even if you lose your cell phone, even if you've forgotten your password, you still have the same face. And so it creates a great experience for the customer and a high degree of certainty for the bank, because it basically can't be spoofed and it can't be fooled.
Again, I love the focus on making it as easy as possible and bring value not only for the financial institution, but also for the customer, which I think it's the end game for every RegTech organization. You mentioned earlier Monzo. It's a great name to be associated with. Could you please share more about how it is to work with those very exciting and newish companies and neobanks?
Yeah, we're thrilled to be in partnership with Monzo. They've been a great account. Late last year, we won an award together for the best digital experience or user experience in banking. And I think what's so great about Monzo is their focus on the experience for the consumer. that kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit ago, that you're really looking out for the 99% of the people that are the good people. So what companies like Monzo do is make sure that all of the explanations are super clear. What kind of selfie do you want? Do you need to take off your sunglasses? Things like that. And what they'll do then is they put the onboarding and the ID verification all the way at the beginning of the process. And what it allows someone like Monzo to do is automate the entire process using our determination of, is your ID valid and is your selfie a match? And so that gives Monzo the power to do what we were saying, of basically automate within just a few minutes the entire onboarding process, which makes it really a wonderful thing for the consumer. If you think about it, consumers used to form impressions of brands from the branch that they'd kind of walk into, and they'd see the logo and they'd see what it's like. And for digital banks, it's all about the experience. And I think that's what Monzo really excels at, is putting their customer first, making sure that it's a very smooth process, and getting a happy customer at the end of the day, which is what we want as well. For us, if a customer takes their time to submit their ID and their selfie, one of the great things about Jumio is we'll almost always be able to say solid yes or solid no, whether or not it's a valid ID and a match. And so that gives Monzo the ability with certainty to automate that process.
So Monzo is one of the many interesting or exciting companies you're working with at the moment.
Of course. Yeah.
What I like as well is we forget, I think financial institutions forget that the zero moment of truth is important. It's one thing to drive awareness, have a nice brand, and being sexy, but then you need to deliver when it counts. And again, people need to be wowed almost. So that's what I like with neobanks and organizations like yourself, facilitating that amazing zero moment of truth and first interaction on mobile. If we step back, so the fintech industry again is booming. Just in the UK, 1,600 fintech organizations now, double that by 2030. It's booming everywhere. RegTech is very popular as well. What are the key challenges then in the fintech industry right now for an organization like yours, or maybe specific to RegTech?
So I think there's many. I think one of them is scaling, which means not only with size, but also with multiple countries and multiple geographies, that even though there's a lot of startups entering the space, very often what they're doing is just working with one country or a couple countries, and most of the customers that we deal with are working certainly on a national, if not international, if not global scale, and be able to meet all of those needs all over the world is very difficult, because the reg in RegTech is the regulatory, and every single jurisdiction thinks very differently, has a different attitude. You need to invest time and energy with all of those different people. So I think that's one of the key challenges. It's keeping up and adapting to all of the new laws that are coming out. All of the nuances of them is very difficult. And then meeting the changing needs of the customer. That more and more, as we said, FSIs are competing on experience. So how do we help them deliver a better experience for the consumer? Smoother, easier, with less friction. And so those are extremely difficult challenges that how do you basically make dealing with you a joy? Because ultimately what all of the banks are going to be competing on is the experience, not the percentages of interest rates of the loan that you get. It's really how easy is it to deal with them.
So I really like that. If I step back again, I think you announced recently like a lot of growth recently based on your AI powered technology, and you invested in product research and development. So very exciting. So congratulations for that. You mentioned also one of the key challenges is scaling and potentially going abroad or globally. You're based in Cupertino, I believe, yeah?
The office is in Palo Alto.
Oh, Palo Alto, very exciting actually. Can you just touch, and you spend 1/3 of your time in Europe-ish, give or take? So can you just explain, if you can, difference US, Europe? Is there any major significant difference?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of differences. I lived in Japan 15 years, so I'm pretty comfortable with international business, but I spent about 1/3 of my time in Europe, a significant amount in the US, and then also in LATAM and Asia Pacific. And I think what's really interesting is in Europe there's a lot more regulatory innovation. The US is probably behind in that regard. So things like GDPR and a lot of new laws that we have here around gaming and other things are different in Europe. And the US is, I think, looking to the UK and EMEA to see what lessons can be learned from that. There's new laws that are coming out in California that are very similar, and then the US is probably a year or two behind in that regard. But I think what they want to do is, when they get there, they're just going to learn from the lessons they can from what happened in the EU. So we'll get there eventually, but they're very different markets, and then Asia and Latin America are the same. They're all very, very different, as you'd expect. But that's why for us, being able to provide one total solution that works everywhere is very powerful, because our customers don't want to be the experts that in Korea you have to change the way you store IDs. That's why they pay us, is to know that, so that they don't need to worry about it.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much for sharing those insights. I think it's a fascinating industry, and the global impact and various regulations makes it all the more interesting. Account takeover, is it one of the biggest risks, in the space at the moment?
Yeah, account takeover. This is again why we launched our authentication offering, which basically can't be spoofed. Because we're tying your biometric data to the onboarding process, we know that it's you and that it's not someone trying to take over your account. That's better for the consumer, it's better for the company that is providing the service, and it's just better for everyone. It's a lot worse for the fraudster, but by binding it to the person that does the onboarding, you know exactly who you're dealing with, and that's why Gartner thinks by 2022, more than half the market will have gone in that direction, and we're very pleased to be leading in that regard of having that 3D face print or the biometrics matched up at the onboarding time makes perfect sense.
Thank you so much. I appreciate how busy you are. So last question.
Sure.
What's your vision for the future of electronic KYC, in the next few years?
I think there's going to be more and more migration to biometrics and advanced technology. Things like knowledge-based authentication, KBA, where they're asking a question of what's your mother's maiden name, or what address did you used to live at. Thanks to the countless and if not daily data breaches, that information is virtually useless now. And so it used to be what you know and what you have and who you are. Increasingly, I think the what you know is going to be meaningless, because I could very easily Google you and pretend to be you if I felt like it, but I can't create a 3D face print of you very easily. And so I think that's why the future is biometrics, and we were a leader in that space, and a big believer is that it's not just one type of biometric. I think there's many of them, but that's the kind of spoof-proof future that the consumers are counting on.
Great, thank you so much for sharing all those insights, Rob.
Great.
Congratulations for working with companies like Monzo, and hopefully I'll see you soon in London or in California, why not?
That's right, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.